Redeemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Guys, cash is king. Cash equals privacy. Cash is an easy way for individuals to settle debts or sell goods without government intrusion. Bitcoin is difficult to track, but undisclosed Bitcoin accounts are already, the government is making them illegal in some places. Cash prevents the federal government from getting involved in petty transactions. I'm talking about whether it's garage sales, paying a lawn guy, whatever it may be. Cash equals no ESG scores. I'm going to be talking to my guest, R.C. Williams, with Sherlock Exposes. You're not going to want to miss this show. We're going to be talking about the debt ceiling debate. We're going to be talking about cash. We're going to be talking about centralized bank digital currencies that scare the crap out of me. RC is well versed in this stuff. So stay tuned for some quick program messaging, and we'll be back with RC Williams of Sherlock Exposes. All right, guys, I think this is an excellent podcast to talk about tangible assets, whether that's real estate, whether it's gold or silver. I want to talk to you about my friends at Birch Gold Group. Former President Trump recently issued a warning for Mar-a-Lago. Here's what he had to say. Our currency is crashing and will soon no longer be the world standard, which will be our greatest defeat, frankly, in 200 years, close quote. He's absolutely right. Some experts believe there are serious threats to the future value of the U.S. dollar because of inflation, deficit spending, and our increasing national debt. One asset that has withstood famine, wars, and economic upheaval dating back to biblical times is gold. And you can own it in a tax-sheltered retirement account with the help of Birch Gold. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or your 401k, maybe from a previous employer, into an IRA in gold. And the best part is you don't have to pay a penny out of pocket. You can text Carl, my name, C-A-R-L, to 989898 and claim your free info kit on gold. Think about this. In March of this year, when the banks faltered, the stock market faltered, and gold surged, Birch Gold can help you find out how to protect your savings with gold. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of happy customers. Again, text Carl to 989898 to get your free info kit on gold today. Again, text Carl to 989898. Guys, you want stuff that you can see, that you can feel, that you can smell. That's going to be the way to go, I believe, going into the future. But we have our friend R.C. Williams with us. He's with Sherlock Exposes. You guys know him. He is, when it comes to a lot of this stuff, he's become my go-to guy when it comes to central bank digital currencies, when it comes to cryptocurrency and all this kind of stuff. So RC, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show podcast, man.
Carl, it's great to be back with you, man. I always think about this when we talk. It's like, I wish we could meet on better terms, but I guess the good news is that you're really the tip of the spear, Carl, and you have been the whole time that we've been doing stuff together on this information. So thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And honestly, it's weird, RC, because I look at this particular topic, whether it's cryptocurrency, whether it's central bank digital currencies, and I just believe that we're in a fight together to just kind of restore some common sense in the culture, restore some freedom into the culture. So hopefully people will listen to this podcast. Please share this podcast. I don't say it just because I want numbers, which that's nice, if I'm being honest, but I want people to hear this message. I want people to remain free. I want to free America. I want people to be able to thrive. Central bank digital currencies are a threat. All right, RC, let's start off here. First off, tell people where they can find you right off the get-go. That way I don't forget during the length of this podcast here.
Sure, Carl. So there'll be two places. Our primary is SherlockExposes.com. So we spell Sherlock without a K. It's SHERLOC exposes.com. Each day we do rip from the headlines Monday through Friday. So we take the top news, a lot of it economic, and we break it down for you so that it's quick and easy to understand. Our newest publication, Watchmen on the Wall Weekly, publishes every Saturday. And what we do there is we take the news of the day and we actually tie scripture into it. And the goal there is to help those of us who are followers of the Lord Jesus Christ to connect with those who may be lost or seeking. So both ways you go, Carl, you're going to get great information. And we work as hard as we can to make it all make sense.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. So SherlockExposes.com and Watchmen on the Wall is your weekly publication. All right.
Correct.
Good. And I'm glad you're doing that with a biblical worldview. I think a lot of people need to hear that. Frankly, RC, that's where I started. I started talking about politics, but more with a biblical slant. As time and the world gets crazier, I think I'm headed back in that direction, especially for believers. It seems to be a major disconnect when it comes to people of faith, for some reason believing that we shouldn't be involved in cultural or political issues. And it is absolutely wrong. That shouldn't be our in all and be all. Obviously, Christ has saved us and sanctified us, and our goal is to lead as many people to Christ as possible. But if we believe that we're supposed to be like some sideline, I don't know, spectators in this world, it's just absolutely insane. Insane to me. Okay, so now, all right, let's start here. Obviously, the debt ceiling, the looming debt ceiling crisis, debacle, or what have you. That is the big news. That is the big story.
Right.
RC, I got to be, check me if I'm wrong here. I'm not as concerned about a default. I know essential government will still be paid. Our military, Social Security, all those entitlements will be paid. I'm of the opinion that Republicans need to hold strong. They shouldn't cave on one single issue. They've already agreed to hike the debt ceiling $1.5 trillion, which frankly to me is insane. But I understand that the Republicans don't run the Senate, so they're trying to compromise. The Democrats aren't trying to compromise. They have no intention of compromising. They're going to take this thing all the way down to the wire, hoping that Republicans will cave and, not ask for any spending cuts or any of this stuff. What's your take on the debt ceiling debate that we're headed into, or crisis,
Carl,
so to speak?
People, they've played this game for years, and we're both old enough that we've seen this play out on a couple of different occasions. So we actually covered this in yesterday's edition of Sherlock Exposes. I would say that there's a lot of gamesmanship going on, and both sides of this equation are using the media. I mean, if you think about some of the headlines that are out now, one of them is that Joe Biden is threatening to use the 14th Amendment if he doesn't get his way, which is absolutely insane, by the way. But this is where we're at in the gamesmanship and the politics around how these people have mismanaged your money. So let's do a simple breakdown of what's going on. What we stated yesterday is that all of this showmanship is a continuing effort to rob you blind. So basically what they're doing is all the money that you've given them that they've mismanaged, they actually want to print more. And basically, so if you had a credit card that had a $5,000 limit and you decided you wanted to spend $20,000, you'd just be able to call your credit card company and say, look, I may not be eligible for this, but here's what you're going to do. You're going to up my credit limit to $20,000 and you're going to like it. And then whenever I call you again, you're just going to do what I say. I don't care that you're the credit card company and you control this. Do what I say or else. That's literally what the government does with the debt ceiling. So they're upside down. Now, do we think that there's going to be a huge economic crash? We're leaning towards no, Carl. We do think that there's some showmanship and gamesmanship going on. But I will share this with you and everyone else. There was an article yesterday in AP that gave us pause. And so people can look for it. Basically, it asks the question, what happens if the debt ceiling thing doesn't happen and the U.S. would default on its debt?
Right.
And the reason that it caught our attention is that Mark Zandi, who works with Moody's Analytics, so Moody's is basically the credit score for all things that go on economically, not just in the U.S., but in most parts of the world. Mark Zandi made a comment that if the U.S. were to default on its debt in any way, that no corner of the world would be spared from the issue. So when we saw that, we said, while we don't know that it's in the realm of reality that everything completely implodes, when we see harbingers, or as we say in the research business, leading indicators like that, the joke that we always use is that if the bomb diffuser guy is running, you should probably keep up.
That's a good analogy.
Carl, it's true. So while we don't think there's going to be a complete implosion, I think that people should be paying attention, if for no other reason than this is another lesson in how your public servants treat you and your money and the finances of the country in which you live. We're now just in funny money phase, Carl. And the concern here is that one side says, look, you have to raise a debt ceiling or else. But the other side is, when do we get to the point where we actually take some fiscal responsibility? I mean, look, let's be honest here. Another one of the headlines, the White House said, look, if we default on the debt ceiling, the economy will crash by 45% and like $10 trillion in investor value will be wiped out. So you've got all these harbinger headlines. Right. And the question I continue to ask myself, and Juliana, who is my business partner, brought this up yesterday, isn't it interesting that we're on the edge of default and they're saying, look, Social Security payments won't get made and everything else, but there's still $375 million to send to Ukraine. And what I said to her, I said, oh, that's from the other account. Don't worry about that. That comes from somewhere else, right? But it's all, honestly, it's all coming from the same place.
Sure.
This is crazy town. And we, the people, is serious. If we don't look at this and say, okay, we've got to get our arms around this thing and have some level of fiscal responsibility, because if we just keep going down this road, what people don't realize, they say, oh, well, it's cool. The debt ceiling is just going to get raised. What you don't realize is that every time they do this, any wealth that you have continues to erode, and eventually we're going to get to zero.
Yeah, and this is what's so frustrating to me, because the answer, in my opinion, to getting these politicians in check is simply teaching people about money, basic economics, handling money. I mean, it's why, listen, I like to keep money really simple. That's why I listen to Dave Ramsey. I mean, it's just I just need simplicity. Right. You know, I'm not some R.C. Williams that understands all these complex cryptocurrencies. So I like to keep it simple, stupid. But it works and it's effective. And a lot of people should be taught basic economics, civics, in my opinion, and just how to manage, going back old school here, but how to manage a checkbook in school. And honestly, I think it should start as early as middle school, and perhaps even elementary or grade school, or whatever they call it nowadays. But just it's fascinating to me, because I think the reason why the government is become so powerful and we have issues like a debt ceiling crisis that's looming is because so many Americans don't understand money, and they don't understand that they're the ones, whether they're rich, the poor, the rich understand it, but the poor. And many people in the middle class, quite frankly, don't necessarily understand what's going on. And that's not a slight, that's intentional. The government has intentionally dumbed down the U.S. population when it comes to money, RC. I was reading a piece from the Heritage the other day, and with the debt that we currently have, and with the even with the Republican plan, if this passes, $1.5 trillion, we extend our debt ceiling or raise our debt ceiling, you're talking about every single American $94,000 in debt. Now, we don't see that. It's not on a credit card statement or a mortgage payment that we get monthly, but that weakens our dollar. And so many people are buying power. So let me get here. Let me go here, RC. The U.S. dollar, were it no longer to be the reserve currency, talk about the implications that would have, because I think that would be a absolute disaster. And back to your first point, if a strong dollar, we send this money to Ukraine, regardless of how people feel about Ukraine. you have to understand we're just like blowing money with no accountability. Having a weak dollar is a national security threat, is it not?
So here's the interesting thing, Carl. And you talked about simple economics a minute ago, and I can't stress enough. If economics were made simple and taught to everybody in basic civics, where we wouldn't be in the position we're in. And let me preface what I'm going to say by saying this. If you ran, Carl, if you or I ran our households, or anybody who watches this ran their households like the government runs their affairs, we would be put under the jail. Okay, we would have the cops beating down our door with warrants to take us to jail for criminal behavior. So let's just get that set first.
Right.
When we talk about the strangeness of modern economics, so we live in a debt-based system, right? If debt isn't created, the modern economy as we know it simply won't move. So what they tell you is that, well, a strong dollar is actually dangerous to the world because it depresses other currencies. So a weak dollar is a positive. Now, I'm not going to go down this. This isn't an economics class, right?
Right.
You come and you listen and watch Carl's stuff so that you can make sense of this craziness, because they try to pull a hocus pocus on you. So let me say this. If you're in a scenario, and honestly, look, we're already a good ways down the line here. And there are a lot of people economically who disagree with me. They say, RC, there's no way that the US dollar isn't the world's reserve currency, or that it crashes, because what are people going to go to? Like, what else is left?
Right.
And my response is simple. I say, so look, the BRICS contingent of nations, it started with Brazil, India, China, and a couple of others, they now have 19 more applications for countries to join them. If you don't think that the possibility of the US dollar no longer being the world's reserve currency isn't real, why don't you ask the countries that are already looking into alternatives, or looking at a world where they don't have to deal in US dollars, and you tell me what you think is going to happen. So what a lot of people have to do is suspend this grandiose idea that the US dollar is the world's reserve currency. It's going to be around forever. It's always been that way. It's always going to be that way. We would not be the first currency to lose its dominant position. You know, a lot of people don't even remember what currency we took over. The pound sterling was dominant forever until the US dollar really kind of took over. And the things that put us in a position to do that, most notably oil, you'll notice now that Saudi Arabia has basically said, well, look, we don't really need to deal in US dollars. And then China said, well, look, we don't really need to deal in US dollars. Then Russia said it. And now others are saying it, right? There are some that are saying, look, we don't even want to do transactions in dollars anymore. So let's get, now that we've got your mind there, that this is a possibility, let's look at a scenario where you go to bed tonight and then you wake up tomorrow and the US dollar is no longer the world's reserve currency. Chaos? Yes, absolutely. What would be interesting, though, is what would happen to your buying power. So literally overnight, the way that you conduct business would be going from Carl's going to go get a candy bar, the convenience store, he gives them $2 or $3 or whatever it is now because of Biden inflation. And then he goes in and they say, well, no, Mr. Jackson, that'll be $250. And you're like, well, wait, what are you talking about? I just want to get a candy. I get a candy bar every day. It costs me $3. And they're like, no, it's $250 today because the dollar isn't really worth anything. If you've heard the stories about the Weimar Republic of Germany with the wheelbarrows and stuff like that, that becomes a reality. You know, imagine 8 to 10 million people instantly losing their jobs. Imagine half of your wealth just being wiped out overnight. These are the realities of what happens if the US dollar loses hegemony as the world's reserve currency, or we go through a situation where our currency crashes. So when we've talked about this a lot, Carl, and when we talked about the banking crisis a while back, which is still going on, by the way, that's not over. We said this, that I don't think people really appreciate how close we were to a full-on economic implosion and collapse, which, as Mark Zandi said, and I mentioned a moment ago, wouldn't just affect the US. There would be a cataclysm that shook the world. So, you know, it wouldn't be good, I think, would be the sum of all the parts, but I still don't think people quite appreciate what a world looks like where one day they're able to drive their car without a problem. They can put gas in it, they can pay their mortgage. And then the very next day, their stocks, bonds, whatever they're invested in, that worth gets slashed in half at best. They can't get into their bank accounts. The US government says, oh, there's a bank holiday until we say so. And they're kind of like, well, what do I do now? I can't pay my bills. And the money I do have isn't really worth anything. What do I do now? I don't think people quite appreciate just how close we are. And some of that's by design with the media and the stories they won't tell you.
Sure.
You have to come to places like Carl's show to hear this. But Carl, I honestly don't think that people appreciate what the world would look like if one day they woke up and half, if not more, of their net worth was wiped out and the money they had in their pocket wouldn't buy them anything.
You know, frankly, it's a scary thought. And I think this is where politics comes into play as well, with these leftists talking about how evil America is and wanting to redistribute wealth. Guys, you have to get, and you have to share with other people. If we're to redistribute our wealth, if America is some evil place and we need to give it all away, what other country is going to rise to the top? It's going to be China. And China is a communist place. They don't care about people. They will kill you in a heartbeat. I know the Democrats want to get there. It's sad. It's scary. But this is where we are. So this is what scares me when we have all these political conversations and all of these lefties just talking about how evil America is, and we're systemically racist, and those are the conversations that concern me, because they distract from the real issues, the real wars. If we were, as RC explained, if we were to the US dollar was no longer the reserve currency, someone is going to take that place, but our place. But not only that, we are going to suffer tremendously. So you have a nation in the United States that have literally lifted up a lot of countries out of poverty, just with our motto of free market capitalism, even though we don't really practice free market capitalism. But we talk
Carl,
a good game.
Carl, if I can touch on something here, because you brought up an interesting point. People have asked both Juliana and I, well, you're talking about this, and we talk to people who are liberal, and they say the same thing, right? They're like this and this, and we're this, and well, what do you think's going to happen? I mean, what do you think's going to happen to America if that happens? And it's pretty simple. If you want to see a glimpse of your future, where the US dollar isn't the world reserve currency and the US is not in a position where it still is to some degree now, I encourage anyone watching or listening to this to go out and walk the streets of LA or Portland or San Francisco or New York. And I don't mean the suburbs. I mean, go downtown or Philly and go to these places. It looks like an episode of The Walking Dead. That's your future. That's what a third world country looks like. And that's in essence what the US is on its way to. And I think that people, Carl, inherently are at a point now, even those who have been asleep, are like, they'll talk to you and say, Carl, you mentioned a couple of months ago that things were off. Is something wrong? Like, they're at that point right now. And that's a glimpse into your future. That's what a third world country looks like. And I got to tell you, I mean, I grew up in San Francisco, and I know you from LA, and I don't want any part of that. Like, I see it, and I'm like, I can't believe that this is happening. But that incremental creep where you go out and maybe you see the road, you're like, man, they used to take care of this road all the time. It's got potholes or things are dirty. Like that general feeling right now, you're seeing the permeating of that third world starting to spread. And economically and politically, what's happening with the liberal ideology is they're putting us on an express train to get to that. That's what the whole country is going to look like.
Man, that's a sobering thought. I'm speaking to R.C. Williams of SherlockExposes.com, SherlockExposes.com. RC, and I mean this in a good way, is an absolute nerd when it comes to this stuff. I mean, whether it's cryptocurrency, central bank digital currency, all this stuff that is that it's really hard for me to explain. I just sit here, I invite RC on, and I nod my head, and I'm like, yeah, these people think I'm as smart as this guy is. That's how it works, guys. That's how it works. That's how you rise to the top. You know, you bring the best of the best in, and then you just take the credit. So it's pretty amazing. It's a good gig if you could get it, RC. It's a good gig.
Amen.
All right, let me. I want to talk about cash real quick, and I want to go to which is the real reason I brought you on today. Central Bank, and now I can't even say it. Centralized Bank Digital Currencies. I want to get to that. All right, so guys, I want you to understand this. Cash is king. I know everybody wants convenience. Everybody wants to move on to something that is more convenient, but you have to understand what that means. This is why you will often hear me talk about, I think, the big issues that erode our civil liberties, cash being one of them, but healthcare, immigration, regulation. I think this would fit into regulation, energy. The dollar is crucial. Cash, I said this at the beginning of the program. Oh, and let me do this first because I forgot to mention this. I don't want to forget to mention our sponsor, our other sponsor. That was a horrible segue. But I've got to talk about Mike Lindell at MyPillow. You talk about a patriot that's fighting to try to save America as it exists today. Mike Lindell is doing that. He has a company, MyPillow. You guys are aware of the company. He is a patriot, regardless of what the media says about him. This is a man that has literally, not like Hunter Biden, he literally went from crackhead to entrepreneur. Mike Lindell did, and he has built a company in MyPillow. He has an amazing testimony where God has brought him from, but he did it on his own, well, with the help of God. But literally created this company, MyPillow. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Carl. He has this new pillow, the new MyPillow 2.0. There's a offer exclusive to my listeners. Buy one, get one free. The new MyPillow 2.0 has the same patented adjustable feel as the original MyPillow, but now it has a temperature regulating thread on the exterior of the pillow, making it softer, smoother, and cooler for an even better night's rest, if you can imagine that. So all you have to do to take advantage of the buy one, get one free offer from Mike Lindell, American Jobs, American Manufacturing, 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. All you have to do is go to mypillow.com, click on that radio listener square at the top of the page, enter my name, Carl, C-A-R-L. Or if you prefer, give them a call, 800-858-0263. Again, that number, 800-858-0263. Mention my name, Carl, and you'll get the buy one, get one free offer of the new MyPillow 2.0, or peruse the website. You'll get deals up to 66% off just by using my name, Carl. All right. Now, getting back to RC Williams of SherlockExposes.com. I mentioned this at the top of the podcast, RC. Cash equals privacy. Cash is an easy way for individuals to settle debts. Cash prevents the federal government from getting involved in petty transactions, whether it's somebody that details your car, does your lawn, if you have a garage sale, whatever it may be. And cash equals no ESG scores. No wonder the government wants to get rid of cash, because with cash, the people are in charge. Centralized Bank Digital Currencies, which we'll get into some of the scary things about that. There's obvious reasons why the government wants to get rid of cash. Make the case for cash, if you will, RC.
Wow, Carl. So you honestly made the case for cash in leading into this. So we think about where we are economically. Let me just say this for the record, so we can get on with the thing, so people are very clear of where things stand. Your government hates you, okay? And they hate you because you have a level of freedom that allows you to still have something like cash, right? And the government hates competition. If they can't track it or tax it or get you into a box to do the things that they want you to do, they hate it. And as a byproduct, they hate you. And what's always been scary to me, as someone who actually took civics and is a history buff and loves the history of the United States, good, bad, or indifferent, is that the way we're designed, that's our responsibility, is to tell the people who we send to serve us what they should and shouldn't do. And that's largely been flipped on its head, much like the states tell the federal government what they can and can't do, not the other way around. We've
Right.
literally flipped our entire process in the way that the United States was designed on its head. And the reason I shared that is I want to give you an idea of why they hate things like cash, because they can't track it or tax it. Your economic freedom leads to all other levels of freedom. This is why there are tons of people who are trying to get into the United States.
Yeah.
Notice they're not trying to rush into Mexico or into Lebanon, which, by the way, is having its own economic issues. Well, we'll get to bail-ins and bank holidays here in a second, Carl. Notice they're not rushing to get into those places. They're rushing to get out of them. Reason being, economic upward mobility and economic freedom still exist in the United States. Cash is king for obvious reasons, because the transactions aren't on record. The government can't tax them. They can't track them. Those are all really good things, right? So now what you have is a situation where the government is saying, well, look, we live in a modern and convenient age. So what we're going to do is give you the option to not have to deal with cash. It's a pain to try to get it exact. And if something costs $1.49 and you give them $2, you're going to have this change in your pocket and it's a real pain. Like, why don't you just use your card, right? Oh, that's easier, right? So, okay, so your bank's got it covered in this, that, and all the other. So now we're in the phase where you've been doing that to the point now where you can tap your card. You don't even have to insert it, or you can use something like your phone or your watch to pay, all tracked, right? But that is still not enough, because now what the government is telling you, and this is what we covered, Carl, recently when we talked about the banking crisis, now the government is telling you that the banks that you've relied on most of your life to take your money and loan it to someone else, which is actually what they do.
Yeah.
Okay, that's your money. That's why they tell you, look, it's not really your money. Well, look, they're not really secure either. So, it's hard to trust them, buyer beware, like we'll insure it and you'll be okay. And that's what everybody thought, right? Until we scared them in March and we said, hey, guess what? The government can't afford to pay insurance on all your deposits. They get about 1% of the depositors and the rest of you are just screwed. Now they're saying, well, look, these things are such a mess that the only way to really solve this problem and make sure we have a safe and secure society, as Chancellor Palpatine from Star Wars says before he puts his boot on your face, is to have the government, like, we can handle this.
Oh, man.
If we regulate transactions and we keep an eye on this, look, everything will be okay. And Carl, I want to give people a quick journey, and then we'll come back. We'll kind of weave through this. But I want to give people a kind of you are here. So the you are here for you right now is you're in a place where the U.S. government is currently certifying banks under a program called FedNow. Here's the quick explanation of that. Carl, if I paid your business $25,000 today and I wrote you a check, you wouldn't see that money for 2 weeks. That's how the banks work today. If you guys haven't noticed this, if you deposit a check, getting that money to clear takes forever. Or if you send an ACH, it takes forever. Like, we got paid from somebody on Thursday. They're like, congratulations, your money will be available Tuesday. And it's like, wait a minute, what happened, right? So what FedNow says is, look, we're going to make all of those transactions instant. So you no longer have to wait. The government has your back. That program, Carl, is going to roll out July 1st.
Wow.
What's going to happen is that the government now is going to become the savior for a pain point. Remember what we talked about with cash versus cards, right? They got us. They put the banana in the tailpipe, like in Beverly Hills Cop. They got us there.
Oh, man.
They're about to get us again. There's this pain with the banks. So they're going to say, look, we're just going to make them all instant. So now if I write Carl a check for $25K, he takes it to the bank and boom, it's available right away. Or I send him an ACH and it's available right away. That's step one. At that point, for most people, it's going to be really hard to make the case that the government doesn't know what they're doing. From there, we then start to get down the road of a central bank digital currency, which is basically the government becomes the bank. Then what the government's going to say is, you remember those economic problems we had with the banks and the economy being unstable? Look, we can't trust the system anymore. The only way to fix this is with a central bank digital currency where the government becomes the bank. And look, we've got you covered. No more problems. Look what we did with FedNow. We made all the transactions instant. People are going to be like, well, why wouldn't I do that? And friends, that's going to be your second foot in the grave, so to speak, of your economic freedom.
Man, this is it's so chilling. What's crazy, RC, is I got to wrap up soon. This is some inside baseball. So we had so many technical difficulties on. RC was supposed to yesterday. RC was supposed to be on yesterday. We have a guest booked for today in like 45 minutes, and I still have to do a little more prep for that show. But RC is so good. I just want to sit here and listen. So we're gonna have to make sure that we book him when I'm on one of these shows. I'll be filling in a lot for Officer Tatum and Prager and even Mike Gallagher soon. So we'll get RC on to talk about this stuff here. I think it's very important for bigger audiences to hear what he has to say. I mean, obviously, this is a premier platform. Let's be real. But, when you fill in for national hosts, all right, you get a little more. You know what I'm saying? They've got a bigger pool. And I want people that are fighting the fight. I'm not one of these people that are like, Carl, you're moving up the ladder. Make sure you keep everybody down. No, I want a free America. And I want people that are in the fight with me or alongside me that are going to help people think as free Americans. I want them to be exposed. So frankly, this is why, and not like I need to expose RC because he's doing a lot of work. He and Juliana on the side that are, I mean, they're just doing amazing work and they're getting known and growing and so on, et cetera. So I'm proud of you for that, RC. But obviously, I want people to be exposed to fighters and leaders that are going to save this country. Frankly, and Carl, you're a Christian, you shouldn't be worried about government. Listen, man, this is the system. God placed us here. This is we're not supposed to be sideline chumps, man. God has given us a true blessing to be Americans in that we have a level of freedom where we can send out missionaries to share the gospel, where we can make money to support missionaries and so on, et cetera. So think of it in that way. But, RC, I don't want to get bogged down on this issue because I just want to go to a few points with the centralized bank digital currency. But sure. I wanted to have you on earlier when First Republic Bank collapsed. And then the government is like, oh, here you go. Who ended up taking them over? Was it Chase?
Yes.
It was JP Morgan, Chase, or whatever bank.
Correct. And
the federal government, they didn't even put in a bid for First Republic Bank. The federal government was just like, here you go. And guys, here's what I want you to understand. I don't care if you hate Republicans. I don't care if you hate Democrats. Here's what I would prefer. I actually prefer, I say this as a conservative, all right? I prefer that you hate both. I prefer that you distrust both parties and just think for yourself. Imagine Biden being in control of a national bank. And then if you hate Trump, that's fine. I think he would do a better job, but we don't want communists. We don't want kings. We don't want dictators. But if you hate Trump, I want you to be like, yeah, I don't want Trump in charge of a centralized bank. Like, it's a win-win for we the people. So be skeptical of all politicians. But just quickly, RC, this First Republic Bank being snatched up on a no-bid offer by Chase Bank, I was just like, holy, excuse my language. God, don't strike me with it. All right. RC gave me those thoughts, Lord. All right. But I was just like, this is scary town.
It is, Carl. So one of the things that we've done with Sherlock Exposes, and this leads directly into what you're asking about. One of the goals that we had with the publication was to turn it into a search engine because the NSA search engine, which is Google, has become inherently difficult. So we actually wrote about that acquisition, and I do that with air quotes because I'll explain in a moment. But if you go to Sherlock Exposes, you can search, and we actually break down what JP Morgan Chase, the government, and First Republic did in that deal. But I want to remind people of something that Janet Yellen, who's the Treasury Secretary, said not too long ago. She told bank CEOs that more mergers would be necessary. Now, Carl, we've been on with you a lot, and we've talked about the flip-flop of Janet Yellen. One day she's going to cover the deposits, the next day she isn't, right?
Right.
So here's how bad it is. People say, oh, well, Carl, First Republic got acquired, so it's all good. So let me explain to people real quick what happened. There was a no bid offer, right? So the government went to JP Morgan Chase and said, please buy this thing. Please buy it, or else it's going to cause a cataclysm in the economy. Like we've told people before, this is like The Walking Dead. All the banks have the virus. It's just a matter of which one dies first. And as they die, they'll spread it, right? As they reanimate, they spread it. So the government went to JP Morgan Chase and basically begged. So JP Morgan said, well, look, we want all the assets, none of the liabilities, and you guys are going to have to carry some weight here. So here's what happened. JP Morgan made the acquisition of the assets of First Republic Bank that they wanted, and the government gave them a $50 billion loan in order to complete the acquisition. Again, this goes back to what we talked about at the top of the show, Carl. This is your government at work hating you, right? So now you've basically bailed out First Republic, and JP Morgan Chase gets to make all the money and doesn't have to deal with any of the liabilities. They've done this with the banks that have gone under. If you go and look at the deals and how they were done, the government basically funded those deals, took a ton of risk, and the banks swoop in and they get all the good stuff. They don't have to deal with any of the toxic debt. So as these banks continue to go under, because there are a couple of others on the brink, we won't go down the whole list, but you can feel it. This isn't over. And we keep saying it's not over. And as the economy is kind of teetering here, don't be surprised if you see them come in rapid succession. All that said, this is the world in which we live right now. And Janet Yellen's statement, and we always say this to people, when these people say something that sounds outrageous or outlandish, take them literally. It's just like when they say men can have babies. We covered this a couple of weeks ago, just a quick aside. They said it and people say you're out of your mind. Well, the government is funding experiments into womb transplants. That's taking the wombs from cadavers of women and putting them into men who think they're women. So when these people say things like this, you have to take them literally. With the banking system, oh, we're going to bail it out. You guys should really look into what they say when they say, quote unquote, bail out, because as you can see with JP Morgan Chase, it was just welfare.
This is scary because this gets us closer and closer, to a centralized bank where the government controls everything and you don't have a say over your money. Imagine you not having a say over the money you work for, you earn. It's a scary concept, and we are moving there quickly. And one of the reasons why these banks can collapse so quickly is simply because we're online now. Like, I like dealing with cash, and even I'll sit on my phone, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I have a good credit score. All right, and put it that way. Mm-hmm. All right, and so I like making sure that I pay stuff early and on time. It's kind of like it's like an addictive game for me. So I'll make payments if I have payments that I don't need to make right now and stuff like that and all that kind of stuff. But I sit there and I think, as quick as I interact with my bank over the phone, using my phone, somebody could quickly just remove their money from their checkings account. Banks can collapse like that, like instantaneously nowadays. You don't even have to drive to them to drive a collapse. We live in very scary times, so we shouldn't panic. But at the same time, we need to be pressing this issue. Cash is king. This is very important. RC, I've got some points on central bank digital currencies. And if you could just, I'm going to hit them point by point. Sure. And if you could just respond to each point as quickly as possible.
Sure.
Here. All right. So the reason why central bank, I'll give you several reasons. And if you want to add on, please add on, but just make the response as quick as possible if you could, RC. Central bank digital currencies. Point number one, allow Uncle Sam to track and control every penny you earn, every penny you save, and every penny you spend. Why should we be concerned?
You should be concerned because once Uncle Sam gets there, he can control your behavior. So if Carl wants a steak and he had one last week, guess what? Carl doesn't get any steak and he has no say in the matter because he's not free economically.
Man, good God, RC. Okay, you just wiped out one of my questions. That was an excellent response. All right, CBDCs are a powerful tool for politicians to confiscate and redistribute wealth as they see fit.
That's absolutely correct. And think about the inherent dangers of that with some of the people that are representing municipalities in the United States today in Washington, D.C. Would you really want those people to be in control of what you can and can't do?
Man, this is RC. You're better than I thought. I mean, you're good, but
Thank you, sir.
to be able to guys, seriously, to be able to respond that quickly to these questions, that's pretty impressive. It tells you that he studies this stuff and knows this stuff like the back of his hand. So that's good stuff. All right, CBDCs make it possible for central banks to impose. This is one I didn't think about, RC. Negative interest rates with your savings accounts.
So the bail-in, a bailout is when the government bails out a bank. A bail-in is when you do. If you haven't seen this before, look at what's happening in Lebanon right now. They said, hey, look, citizens of Lebanon, we've taken care of you. Now the bank needs you. 10% of all your money in the bank is going to us. Instantly, you have no say or control. That's where things like that end up.
Wow. I mean, that is, just imagine that. You throw your money in the bank. You need your money to pay your bills, to eat, so on, etc. And the bank gets to say, well, or the government does through the bank. No, we're just gonna go ahead and take some of that money. We're gonna tax that money in essence, after you've already been, taxed and paid your fair share. It's a scary concept. All right. Governments can program CBDCs to have an expiration date.
Yep. So if they want you to spend and you don't want to, Carl, they'll penalize you 10% every day until you do. Or if they don't want you to spend and you try, they'll penalize you 10% every day until you comply.
All right. The last one. CBDCs will enable devious social engineering by allowing governments to punish and reward people in ways that they previously couldn't. And you basically answered this with point number one, but I want to go back to this ESG and just kind of pound that point home, if you will, RC.
Sure. So if you want to get a look at the future of this, take a look at the social credit scoring system in China. Carl decides that he's thinking about crossing on a red light. He decides not to do it. But when he gets across, he notices his social credit score went down because he thought about crossing on a red light. He feels bad, wants to go get a beer. He can't do it because Carl had beer last week. And then his mom is sick. He's in Shanghai. Mom's in Guangzhou. Carl wants to travel, but then they tell him he can't travel more than a mile because he's been a bad boy. Welcome to the future of CBDC.
Good stuff. Good stuff, RC. That was really good. All right, guys, listen. That was good stuff, man. Man, and scary stuff, too. All right, guys, listen. I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. We're on Apple. We're on Google. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Rumble. Subscribe to our Rumble channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find us wherever you go to get your podcast. We're on social media. Please follow us, like us on Instagram, Twitter, Getter, True Social, Facebook. We're on there as well. Oh, and I'm with YouTube and Rumble. Please rate and review the podcast. That's going to continue to help us to move up the charts and be exposed to more people. Guys, I'm a civil liberties guy. I'm this guy. I'm a middle class guy, man. I know that God is blessing me to be able to rise here, but I'm a middle class guy. I'm going to be fighting for the middle class. I think the middle class is the group of people, if you will, that the left wants to get rid of. You're either going to be amongst the poor or you're going to be amongst the elite. That's the way the left wants things to go. So just keep that in mind. I'm fighting for the middle class here. So please help us rise up the charts. Please support our sponsors, MyPillow.com, Birch Gold Group. If you want something tangible, you want tangible assets, listen, Birch Gold Group. So make sure you text my name, Carl, to 989898. And again, mypillow.com. Just click on the radio listener square to get deals up to 66% off. Type in my name, Carl. RC, again, remind people where they can go to find you.
Yeah, Carl, thank you. So SherlockExposes.com, we spell Sherlock without a K. So that's SHERLOC, exposes.com. We do rip from the headlines Monday through Friday. And then our newest publication, Watchmen on the Wall Weekly, we take the news of the day, we tie in scripture to help believers have meaningful conversations with the world. People can find that at wearethewatchmen.org. wearethewatchmen.org. And don't worry if you don't get that. If you go to either publication, we link to the other one directly so you can find everything you need.
All right, good stuff. RC Williams, we appreciate you, man, being in the fight and keeping us informed on all things CBDCs, cryptocurrencies, cash, and with a biblical perspective. So good stuff, RC. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Appreciate you, Carl. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. All right, guys, until next time, do not grow weary doing good, and God bless you.